All right. Good afternoon, everybody. And finally, I think this, out of, 6 or 7 episodes, this is the first time I've actually said good afternoon instead of good morning. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Crazy Talk. Crazy Talk is a Facebook Live TV show where we talk about all things mental health related. I'm your host, Lee Thomas. And today we have a very special guest. Our guest is Alison Smith. Alison Smith is a parenting coach and consultant offering private and group support in New Brunswick, Canada. And Alison Smith is joining us today from Quispamsis, which is just outside of St. John, for those of you who aren't familiar. In a world filled with seemingly endless rules for parents, Alison is a voice of solid reason and support for parents who question if they're doing the right thing for their child. Alison offers education and personal development for parents in her region and across the globe. Discover your options at AlisonSmithCoaching.com, where she helps moms and dads decode behavior, manage strong emotions, and build their skill set. Clients discover how to consistently be at their best so they can bring out the best in their children. Fabulous, Alison. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm really glad I made it. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you guys have been having, well, I guess all of New Brunswick, we've kind of been under this torrential rain, and you lost power, and you still managed to make it on the show. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I can't take credit for this beautiful office. It's my friend's, but I'm so glad I'm here because I'm going to ask her to use it from now on.
Can this be my new office forever from now on? I love that. I love that. So, Alison, you work as a parenting coach, which is a position that, some people might be really familiar with. Some people might be a little bit less familiar with. So can you tell us a little bit about why you got involved in parenting coaching?
Okay, so I initially thought I was making something up, a new niche, and coming up with these amazing new approaches and theories. And it turns out that there are pockets of us all over the globe that are simultaneously understanding things in the same way and sharing them in very similar ways. How I initially came to it, though, I was teaching, and it just wasn't the right fit for me, although I loved the teaching aspect and working with kids and just the act of teaching as opposed to just delivering curriculum. So I was searching for something different. And then and at that point, being a teacher and not having my own kids, I was a perfect parent, right? And then I had my own kids, and I went, whoa, reality check. So I was searching for tools and an approach that resonated with me and matched my instincts and intuition and really felt good and felt respectful toward them, while at the same time meeting my needs and my agenda to keep them healthy and growing up in the way that I envisioned. So I was seeking ideas for myself, and at the same time wondering what else can I do with my skills and my interests and my passions for having an impact on the world. So I was exploring a lot of ideas at the time, and just out of the blue went, life coaching. I've heard of that. I should look into that. And so I dabbled a little bit, and I got my first client. I can't believe how low my cost was for working with me then, but really, we were both taking a gamble, and we both knew that, so that was okay. And she had some really good results. I thought we were going to work for 10 weeks, and we ended up working for 5. And she's like, I'm feeling awesome. I'm ready to go and take on the world. And I thought, that's fantastic, but we're done. Now what? So I thought that's a good sign that maybe this is a good career for me. So then, because of all the things I had to learn about a different way of parenting than the way I was raised and many of us were parenting and thinking we were going to parent, I started to combine those two, and I started sharing everything that I was learning and finding that people around me were just as hungry for these ideas as I was. I initially started an online forum of local moms who were all home on mat leave and struggling with a lot of the same things. And so I started it kind of selfishly, but also to help other people that I thought might have the same concerns as me. I wanted to build some kind of a community where others could help me. And yeah, sure, hopefully I can help them too. But really, it was all about me. And I wanted to find a guru, someone who had been there before me, whose kids were maybe grown, and they could show me these are the roadblocks, like avoid these things and do these things. And look how great my kids turned out. I couldn't find someone like that in my local community. So it became kind of a way of helping my younger self I stepped into that role of leadership, creating what I wish that I had had as a new mom.
Goodness, I resonate so much with a lot of that. Not the parenting portion necessarily, but I love when you say, I did it for selfish reasons and also to help other people, because I feel like that's really how I got involved with my business as, a mental health speaker as well, is that I did it selfishly because telling my story is positive and therapeutic for me, but I also did it to help other people because I wish I had had someone telling stories like mine when I was younger.
Exactly. And what a gift for each of us to have found something that we love so much that feeds us and fuels us as much as it benefits others, while at the same time contributing something substantial.
Yeah, we're in a lucky position, which is really, really nice. A lucky position that we've worked hard to get to, but a lucky position nonetheless.
True. Hard work, luck, yeah.
Yeah. So how is, I guess, your approach to parenting different from what we might consider like the classic mainstream approach or like the mainstream approach? I don't know what you would call it.
Yeah. So if I may, I'd like to give a little bit of history around parenting practice. So for generations and generations, we were a bit hard on our kids. And we did that because we knew the world was hard and we needed to prepare them for the tough world by we thought, building up this tough exterior and this tough shell. And while a lot of those values do continue, the values of hard work, the values of resilience, we around the 70s and 80s, well, maybe even it started in the 60s with the flower children. Once they got to the 80s and they had their own kids, it was a lot of the laissez-faire. Oh, let's just be cool, man. They're fine. They know what to do. They're raising themselves, basically. So we had this really authoritarian at one extreme and this permissiveness at the other extreme. And so come the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s, like these more recent decades, we've seen the effect, the negative side of both of those extremes. And so a lot of us have been somewhere in the middle, trying to find some middle ground that sits okay with us. What I realized is that it took me a while with my own kids to get to this point, is that we don't have to be on that spectrum of our way versus their way, or our needs are met versus their needs, our agenda, their agenda, this oppositional type of child raising. What I realized is we can step off of that spectrum entirely and look for, to quote the business world, a win-win, some synergy, where we are working together collaboratively with our own perspectives and needs to find something that's going to work for both. So that's the nutshell. Which is sometimes hard for people to wrap their head around. Well, don't they need consequences? Don't they need to understand how their behavior impacts others? Absolutely, yes. But we don't have to do it the way we've been told that we have to do it. And so my approach is, and others who have been taking a lot of the modern research and incorporating that in the brain science and how children learn, we're incorporating all of that, and we're discovering that, yes, we do need to have a strong leadership position. We need to share our wisdom and our life experience. And another piece of that is that as adults, we have access to a fully developed part of the brain that children don't yet have. We have a fully developed, hopefully, if we've had healthy experiences, we've developed this emotional regulation. We've developed reason and logic, cause and effect, and we can think ahead to what consequences might be. Our children are just beginning to learn that. In fact, that part of the brain in children isn't fully developed until 25 or 30 years of age. So when I tell parents that have never heard that, they're like, oh, and then it dawns on them how they've been approaching their child's behavior and how that's been a disservice to their child and to them. And it's created this oppositional, this confrontational approach. So when we realize that our kids are struggling to do these things we're expecting them to be able to do after we tell them once or 10 times, our focus shifts on how we help them. It's not about making them understand how important this thing is that we're trying to teach them. It's about teaching them the skills so they can figure it out on their own. Because ultimately, every good parent wants the same thing for their child. They want them to be happy, confident, successful, resilient, creative, so that they can create a life for themselves that they feel fulfilled.
Yeah.
So it's the nuts and bolts, as they say, of how to get there that's different between a lot of families and even between couples. So couples come to the relationship usually having very same goals and many of the same values, but they're coming at it from a different perspective or a different life experience. So that's where a little bit of, or a lot of, disconnection or friction is coming up.
Yeah, and I love the way that you like framed that kind of emotional regulation, or like kind of in the realm that I often work in. We call it social and emotional learning, but it's very same pool. And framing that as a skill, because I think a lot of the times people see that as something that you either.
Excuse me, just a moment. Sorry, Lee. Hi, darling. I'm live. Do you know that? I'll talk to you later, honey. He's here playing with the kids during the power outage.
Oh yeah, making the most of that power outage. I love it.
Yeah, he's got a device. Don't tell.
So that kind of framing that social regulation, or sorry, that emotional regulation and that social emotional learning as a skill rather than something that people either intrinsically have or intrinsically don't, because I think that's the way, like, especially working in the mental health field, a lot of the times we talk about it as if it's just something that some people have and some people don't. Some people can emotionally regulate and some people can't, and that's that.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah, which is not helpful for a lot of people. That idea that, it's a skill that you can learn and you can work on and you can build is so huge. But do you find people are ever, resistant to that idea, and they say things like, and I hear this all the time, the idea that, kids just aren't resilient these days. We hear that a lot working in the mental health field.
Fortunately, I don't hear that from my clients, because the people that come to me, they already have a sense of what I teach. Mm-hmm. So I put enough information out there with videos and blogs and things like that anyone that doesn't resonate with that idea or that possibility, they're running for the hills. They're like, this lady's a nut bar. She has no idea what the real world is like. I don't hear from them. However, when I do go into online forums, which I do sometimes I just feel like giving back a little bit, or I'm doing a little bit of research. What are people struggling with right now? What can I create that would be helpful to them? So when I'm in some of those forums, I do hear that. Kids today. And it's interesting because there has actually been research on this. And it's not true. In fact, the world is so far better than it has ever been before. And if I can find a couple links, I'd love to put those in the show notes. Yeah. There's a video specifically that talks about what has improved, and it shows stats. And our world is far better off than it ever has been. And people's lives are far better off than they ever have been. That's not to say there aren't pockets, large areas that are still struggling really, really hard. But globally, if we take an average, we're doing well. And the same applies to our kids and our youth today, teens today, kids, just can't whatever. There are definitely some trends. We talk about the millennial generation and some of the issues that they're having. But there are some incredible things happening because of your generation. And so if we look at it on the whole, we're doing pretty well, and kids are doing well. They're much more open, respectful, eager to make change. And they have some tools and skills to do that, which other generations like us old people, we haven't been able to, right? So another thing is that every generation always says that about the generation coming up behind them. It's just an old fogey thing to do. And the data just doesn't back it up. But I do see that there's areas for improvement, absolutely, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is sort of my zone of genius where I really thrive and love to do, and I feel that I'm effective at doing. So I'm taking my corner and doing what I can here I'm not working directly with the kids, and here's why. Kids go home to an environment, they go back to a neighborhood that may or may not support what it is that I would teach them. And the home environment and that immediate community has such a profound effect on children, especially up to the age of 7 or 8. And I can explain why after if I remember. So they have such an effect that yes, we can plant seeds, we can definitely make a difference, but we can't make as much difference, I feel, as if unless we focus on those communities and those families, those parents. So by working with the parents and changing what is true for those parents and the experience that they're having, and to break that cycle that's been passed down generation to generation, all of those behavior patterns and just subconscious ways of viewing the world and viewing children and how children should be and all of these belief systems that we hold, if we can get in there and mix that up a little bit and heal some of the old wounds that maybe our parents picked up from their parents who picked up from their parents. So if we can do that, they raise their children differently. And we know that if a child has a very different upbringing, their outcomes are far more likely to be positive. So that's why I intervene at the parent level, so that they, with their adult thinking brain, can then make those changes for their children and their children's children. Imagine, and I did a 5-minute talk on this, imagine the impact that we would have if we raised this entire generation across the globe with unconditional respect and unconditional support, regardless of what that child does, says, goes through. Imagine how we could change the world with one generation.
Oh, that would be huge. And I mean, that's something that we even see a lot, like, again, kind of working in the mental health field and working a lot with that stigma piece. For a lot of people, that stigma around mental health, that stigma starts at home for them. That stigma starts in the home environment with things that their parents say about mental health or things that their parents don't say about mental health. You know, if there's this kind of cone of silence around even the idea that our brains can struggle sometimes, that emotionally we can be unbalanced sometimes, or that idea of struggling being seen as something that is something we don't talk about. Yeah, I think that can be. And so I guess kind of going back to just reminding you of what you said in terms of like creating that home environment and working directly with the parents and how that's hugely influential. You said up to age kind of 6 or 7.
7 or 8.
7 or 8, sorry, in particular.
So something happens brain-wise, developmentally with children when they reach around the age of 7 or 8, and it might be a little bit different. Don't quote me on the exact age. I'm not a brain scientist. I just gather what I find and try to translate it. So up until that age, children's brains take everything as fact. The Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, everything is fact, everything is real. They have this magical thinking, this ability to imagine that we lose as we get older. So up until the age of 7 or 8, whatever we say to our children, whether through words or actions, they take in as true. They don't question it. So if they feel that they are being punished because they are bad, they internalize that there is something wrong with them. And I see adult after adult through my practice that are struggling with this feeling, this illogical feeling without proof that there's something wrong with them, that they're broken, that they're not enough. And I think if I could reach those people when they're 6, when they can still be convinced of things or unconvinced of things that weren't positive, how much different. I'd be out of a job, and that would be fantastic.
That feeling of trying to work yourself out of a job. Definitely been there with the mental health stigma reduction. I'm like, hopefully we get to a point where people are like, what stigma? We don't need you to come in and speak. Not necessarily going to happen in the next couple of years, but yeah, that feeling of, that kind of feeling of not being enough, that feeling of being bad, that feeling of being, and especially not enough and not worthy in some way, I think is so huge for a lot of people struggling with their mental health. And people can struggle with their mental health without having mental illness necessarily, but that feeling of not being, good enough, smart enough, kind enough, funny enough, pretty enough is so pervasive, I think. And one of the things, and I guess this is your opportunity to correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm very open to, because I don't work with parents as much as I work with youth generally more than I work with parents. But every once in a while, I'll get a parent reaching out to me on my Facebook page or something, or reaching out to me after an event and saying, my child is really struggling with their mental health. What can I do? And it's going to depend a lot on different situations and different needs and all that sort of stuff. I'm not a clinician, so I often tell people that, there's no shame in reaching out to clinicians. But one of the pieces of advice, which I always hesitate to call it advice, but one of the pieces of advice that I often give is for parents to explore their own mental health a little bit and their own feelings of struggle or not being good enough or not being, or any of those things, because I really think, healthy parents can help to create healthy children. And often people are struggling with their own stuff, and that gets in the way of their ability to support other people in their life. So what do you think about that, Alison?
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. I hope I'm not giving this away, but parents will often come to me for, okay, my child is whining a lot. What do I do about that? Or they just won't sleep or whatever. And so we'll start to explore some strategies and build that toolbox, so to speak. But what most parents come to realize, and I might help them along the way a little bit, is that they've got stuff to work on themselves, and how they are and who they are and what they're bringing to that interaction with their child makes all the difference. And it's beyond the do as I say, not as I do piece. Although, yeah, that can be a struggle. It's the role modeling, but it's also that idea of however we see the world and the mindset that we have and the belief system that we hold and believe as true, even if it's not, that unconsciously or unintentionally rubs off on our kids and gets passed down in a way. So we do have to work on ourselves to be great parents. And I find, can you hear the howling? I'm just
only
checking.
A tiny little bit.
Yeah, my daughter's allowance. Yeah, coming back to haunt me. It's not my daughter howling, just so you know.
Okay, good to know.
So I have no idea where he was.
We're talking about working on yourself in order to be able to help others.
That's a really powerful gift to give our kids, to show them not just how to do it and to allow them to witness what that looks like, but to see their parent saying, you know what, this is important. I do need to do some healing or some thinking on this, reflecting, and maybe get some help. Because then that shows our kids that we're human. They can be human too. Mm-hmm. We ask for help, they can ask for help too. So it's beyond just how to do it. It's seeing it as this is normal. This is the norm. We seek help when we struggle.
Oh, I love that. So we're getting close to our time, which I can't believe it. But I did have a question from someone from my Facebook page when I posted, so excited, going to be talking to Alison Smith, parenting expert. And I said if anyone had any questions to let me know. And one question that someone had was, how do I stop losing my cool with my kids? Do you have any advice that you can give that parent?
Okay, so the easy answer is learn to be calm. And the long answer really is work on your own stuff, because it's what's happening in that moment that's bringing something up for us and pushing our buttons. So we need to create a buffer between that antecedent and our buttons getting pushed. So this is a really long, detailed answer. In fact, I do a whole workshop on this, okay. And it comes up with almost every client. It's common among all of us adults because we aren't taught the skills on how to do this. We aren't taught to think about it, talk about it, explore what to do. But one little tip I would give right away is increase the space between when something happens and we start to react and when we choose how we're going to respond. So we don't want to react, we want to respond. And responding to me means intentional, thinking it through, choosing what is the best option in this moment. And that's really what we all want to do. Most parents know exactly how to respond to their child. They just can't because of all of the stuff that's coming up for them. And the fact that they've suddenly gone out of that higher level thinking part of their brain and they're acting in a fight or flight response. And that's really where we lose our cool, when we're brought into that part of our brain, that more animal instinct. So we want to increase that space between what happens and what we do or say or how we feel. So if we can buy ourselves even half of a millisecond, then we can buy another couple breaths. Then we can start to return to that higher level thinking, and then we can choose to respond. We don't in the moment say, okay, I just got to get calm. That's not going to help us. All we can do in that moment is buy a little time. And whatever way that works for you, practice it when you're calm so that when you're starting to lose it and flip your lid, then you can access one of those strategies just on habit to buy yourself just a little bit of time.
That's fabulous. That's
easy, right?
I know it's one of those things that it sounds much easier than it is. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah. And it helps to have support with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we don't always see how we're responding and how we're reacting and what's coming up for us. But someone else can be a mirror, and then we go, "Oh, gotcha! I can catch that earlier now."
Yeah, absolutely. So if people are watching this and they're saying, "Wow, this lady is incredible. Absolutely love her. Absolutely want to get in touch with her and pick her brain and find out so much more information about who she is and what she does." How can people do that? How can people reach out to you after this video?
Sure thing. Best way is through my website. You can access all my social media. You can arrange a chat with me. I offer a complimentary 15 to 20 minute chat to anyone who wants, whether it's life coaching in general or specifically parenting. So that's www.alisonsmithcoaching.com. Alison with one L. AlisonSmithCoaching.com. And I'll give you the link in the comments.
Fabulous, because I was like, we will definitely make sure for everyone watching, we will make sure that link is down in the comments after we wrap up the show. So,
and Lee, can I mention one more quick thing?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, so when they go to the site, they'll get an offer for a free guide, which is really great for parents on creating more connection and a closer bond with their kids.
Okay,
which is also great for spouses and coworkers and all that good stuff.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so Alison, I just want to thank you for being on the show and for all the work that you do. I know you're making a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and I really appreciate that. And for coming on and sharing some of that wisdom and some of that guidance with us, which is really, really great. So thank you so much for that.
I'm really glad you offered the opportunity. Thanks. I love what you're doing.
And for our audience members, if you are watching this show and you're like, wow, this Crazy Talk episode was awesome, I want to see more episodes of Crazy Talk, you can find them on my Facebook page, facebook.com/LeeThomasSpeaks. And if you're looking to get in touch with me, you can find me at Lee Thomas. That's LeeThomas.ca. In the meantime, we're going to log off for now. You can check out our next Crazy Talk episode, which is going to be next Saturday at 12:30 Atlantic. Again, on my Facebook page, facebook.com/LeeThomasSpeaks. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.